Patrick Bet David is the host of the PBD podcast, a very popular show on almost every digital streaming and live on-demand platform. He's also an entrepreneur, a very successful entrepreneur for the past decade, an entrepreneur in media. I've talked to Patrick a few times in my life, but this is the first time I believe I've gotten to speak to Patrick on air, so I'm excited to welcome him into the Will Cain Show. What's up, Patrick?
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm glad to have you here on the show. I got a lot to talk to you about today. You, your career, your thoughts. But let me just start with sort of a question I was thinking about this morning at 30,000 feet into the air. And there is just no doubt, Pat, that Donald Trump has changed America. I think we're going to probably have books written about Donald Trump for the better part of a half a century, attempting to understand who he is and, better even yet, who we are and how we responded to Donald Trump. And that leaves a very obvious and interesting question. What happens after Donald Trump? Not just who leads America, not just who leads conservatism, but kind of what happens to the national psyche after the better part of a decade of defining itself and its personality as a reaction to Trump. So what happens after Donald Trump?
It's such a great question. I mean, you got to look at it in a couple different ways, right? If you think about Rush Limbaugh, everybody wanted to be Rush Limbaugh. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Beck? Is it going to be, this guy? Is it going to be Clay? Is it going to be, I'm going to be the next Rush Limbaugh, right? Because he had such a big Johnny Carson. Who's the next Johnny Carson? Is it Letterman? Is it Leno? Is it this? Is it that? Are we going to follow their footsteps? Morton Downey Jr. And a bunch of people may not even know the name Morton Downey Jr., but he was at one point beating Oprah Winfrey, beating Montel Williams, beating all these guys. So who's going to be the next thing? When you think about sports, Michael Jordan, sometimes I dream that he is me, like Mike. I want to be like Mike. Kobe, I want to be like Mike. All these guys want to be like Mike. There's only been one person in the history of America that has reached the milestone of being a trifecta. Let me unpack this for you, what a trifecta is. Where you make it in business and you become a billionaire. Check. Where you make it in media and you run a TV show or something that's popular, that you're up there as a number one spot for 5, 10, 15 years. Hey, you got The Apprentice, 15 years running, dominating the marketplace. Arnold tried to do it, miserably failed. Check, those are two things. And then you make it in business, you make it in media. Then you mean to tell me you go become a president? That's what you do? Yes. No one's ever done that in the history of America, period. He is one of one. Love him, hate him, he's one of one. Now, your question of what happens after him, that's there's a lot of dynamics to it, right? It's not just a one-dimensional question you're asking. Let's kind of process that together. If you look at the marketplace today, Mark Cuban just sold the Dallas Mavericks to the Miriam Adelson, I believe, the widow of Sheldon Adelson, and she just bought him out. And, they're a $30 billion net worth type of a family, a lot of wealth there in that family. And at the same time, she gave $100 million right after the conviction that she's committed to giving to the Trump campaign. That's some stuff that's circulating to the point where Adam Silver had to come in. You follow sports closely, and Adam Silver had to say, hey, we don't necessarily know if you can be the governor representing the Mavs. We think it needs to be your nephew or somebody else, your son. They chose somebody else because of how much aggressive she is of Trump support. And in the NBA, the BLM type of a market, and Mark Cuban being somebody that was the face of DEI while he's running the whitest team in the NBA, according to Guardian, for the first 19 years of his ownership. 75% of his team was always white, the whitest team in the NBA. He leaves the team, and now he's sold the company, sitting on a lot of cash. Is Mark Cuban thinking about being a trifecta because Trump's his inspiration? Because he's made it in media. Shark Tank is a phenomenal show. He's made it in sports. He's famous. He's been a billionaire. He's had nice exits. The only thing missing from Cuban's resume is what? Being a president. Who else is on that list? This guy's not a trifecta, but he's a beast of a guy, Jamie Dimon. Why is Jamie Dimon talking about he's stepping away from the game? What's he doing? Where's he going to go? Go to another guy. Dwayne Johnson is 2 out of 3. He's made it in media higher than any of these guys. He's got 600 million total followers, shy of 1 billion followers on social media. He's the highest paid actor in the world. Last 4 out of the 8 years, he was the number one highest paid actor worldwide. In 2021, during COVID, he made $270 million as an actor. Zoa Energy, give or take, $1 billion valuation. Terramana, if we use the same calculation as George Clooney's tequila drink, is worth $3.5 billion. World Wrestling Federation, chair, all this stuff that he's done. movies. He may want to run for office. He's about to be a billionaire. He's at $800 million net worth, give or take. So I think the 2028 field is going to be a star-studded field. It's going to change. It's not going to be who knows the most about policies. It's going to be who's the most famous, that's recognizable face, likable, that people have the lasting to check off their resume. Even, some of them may be discouraged to do because they saw how the media destroyed Trump's personal life, where he's not invited to the parties anymore. So that may scare the crap out of some of these guys. Do I run as a Republican? Do I run as a Democrat? Do I run as an independent? So that part's going to change. Now, the real question becomes, that's more important than any of the stuff that we're talking about, and I'm sorry for giving a long-winded answer because you asked a pretty heavy question, is what's going to happen to America? Because, yes, there is one side that are aspirational leaders that are running because they're motivated to be their own stuff that they want to get knocked out of the way. Hey, I want to be an NBA champion. Hey, I want to be an NBA All-Star. Hey, I want to win the Ballon d'Or, where I'm the best scorer, Ronaldo, Messi. Hey, I want to win the World Cup, Portugal. Hey, I want to go. I haven't done that yet. That's great, and we need that. But how about finding the next true believers who love America, who are coming from a place of wanting to protect and serve, and where it's not about the resume, it's not about the legacy, it's not about the fact that I want to be like this other person. It's about the fact that, no, I'm doing this because this country changed my life, and I'm not going to let China, the establishment, Iran, Russia, anybody else on the outside to come and ruin this thing here. I'm going to do my part. I'm not going to let the DOJ in the future scare the hell out of somebody else to run for office because one side of the political party can ruin the other opponents. I'm worried about that. And I think that's the next true believers that we're getting right now. We need more synergists. Every civilization and society and company goes through a few different phases. First, they have the prophet, the visionary. This is the founding fathers. This is Benjamin Rush. This is George Washington. This is Thomas Jefferson. This is Adams. We're going to build this thing. There's no taxes. Here's what's going to happen. We cannot believe what they did. We're going to leave. We're going to make this the greatest country. These are prophets, right? Steve Jobs, prophet. You got founders that are selling the vision. One day we're going to do X, Y, Z. Then founders attract barbarians. Sometimes the founder is the barbarian, but you bring the barbarians. I'm willing to fight for you. I'm going to go out and face the enemy. So the barbarians are attracted to a prophet. Then the barbarians, next phase, you find builders and explorers where they build stuff. The, Rockefellers, the J.P. Morgan Chase, the Carnegies. We're going to go build railroads. We're going to go build companies. But then shows administrators and lawmakers. Then it shows up bureaucrats and aristocrats. We are at that phase right now in America. The only way we can save this country is the last phase of people that show up during this phase of bureaucrats and aristocrats. And those are synergists. America is desperately in need of a lot of synergists that can talk to everybody and challenge everybody and stay firm on our values and principles. I'm hopeful that those 16-year-old, 28-year-old, 32-year-olds, the bench of other great Americans are being born today that are going to come up and do something about it. So I know you were expecting a 2-minute answer. I think I give you a 7-8-minute answer here.
That's all right, but I am going to follow up with questions, so you're going to have more opportunity to explain. When I hear the word synergy, Pat, I'm going to be real with you. I'm turned off. It's immediately like a concept that sounds like it's given in a HR course, a mid-level management position at a not very impressive business. I love your description and your analysis of what's happened with America, sort of the turnings of leadership. And there's been people that have written about this, the fourth turning, the third turning, the second turning. And we know this also. We've seen various memes. Hard men create easy times create soft men create hard times create hard men again. I think you're right in how you break down America in those phases, and we've seen it, and I know you've seen it in entrepreneurship. Steve Jobs is different than Tim Cook. There are founders and visionaries, and there are men that keep the train running on time. I think you're probably right as well about where we are in America today, that it's largely in an administrative phase, but I don't fully understand your explanation of why we need synergists. Again, a concept I'm skeptical of. Synergists to guide us out of this phase. And I'm not calling for revolution. I just did get a new book, Pat, called The Age of Revolutions, and it's from like 1750 to 1850. Like every great nation state went through the age of revolution. And look, our founders said, revolutions are necessary to maintain the course of liberty. I'm not calling for revolution, but I don't know the model that takes us through all of those turnings you laid out.
Right.
We're sitting at the administrative state, that brings us back to a visionary state based upon the concept of liberty.
And I appreciate that. Keep in mind, the one thing I did say is a synergist that doesn't compromise the values and principles of America, doesn't compromise. One can have the ability to deliver a message without compromising this, but doing it in a way where the other person says, I disagree with you, but I respect the fact that you're firm about that and you're not willing to compromise it. I don't have a choice, but I love the fact that you spoke to me in a respectful manner where we have the ability to do something about this. Now watch this. 4 weeks ago, my wife and I, we have 4 kids, 12, 10, 8. Our youngest is about to turn 3 years old in a week. And I'm obsessed right now with a few different things. With the companies I'm running, I'm obsessed with HR because we have to go to a couple thousand employees. HR is the biggest, hurdle. We have to learn a lot more on the HR side. So we've invested a lot of money into our HR because we have to recruit faster and we have better jobs at engagement. On the personal side, we've spent the last couple of years on estate planning. And I'm studying everybody, the families that did it right, the families that didn't do it right, the families where the wealth didn't go to the second generation. Vanderbilt's completely screwed it up because the father wasn't really that involved with the kids. So once the money went to the second, third generation, never made it past it. They just spent it. They were lavish. They were not responsible. They were not disciplined. Where you see the Rothschild, the Medici family, they were more intentional, where it went to multiple generations. 4 weeks ago, I'm in Chicago at the Ritz-Carlton with Goldman Sachs. It's called the Family Founders Forum, where we're in a room with 60 families, net worth $1 billion plus to be in that room. We're the poorest ones in the room, by the way, but we're in that room. We're invited because they're saying, okay, this is what's going to happen with what you guys are doing with all the assets you have. You're going in that direction. Great. And I'm sitting there trying to see the mistakes other families have made. Then we see the Crown family. Keating Crown gets on stage and he says, I'm the oldest G4 in my family. What is an oldest G4? G4 is fourth generation kid. Now, the Crown family, they own one of the biggest shareholders of General Dynamics. So they're a $15 billion family. They have a lot of money. So he says, I'm the oldest G4. There's 47 of us. I'm like, damn. Okay. He says, my daughter is 12 years old. She's the oldest G5. There's 150 of them. Wow. So you're sitting there saying, okay, let's just say you're worth $1 billion. The family estate is worth $1 billion. What's $1 billion when you have 150 G4 grandkids? How much goes to everybody? Then the next family comes up, and it's 3 siblings that are running the company called Let Us Entertain You, the restaurant chain. They own Prime. They have like 8,000 employees. It's a big branch, Chicago-based, and you're seeing these kids talk, and they're telling stories about how they made it work together and responsibility. Who was the driver? Who was the CEO? Who was the ops? Who's the biz dev? Then the next family comes, and then the next family. Everybody's kind of giving their testimony, and then all the owners of the Chicago sports team show up. So you got the Reinsdorf, he's on stage, he's speaking relationship with his father, the Chicago Cubs son, and one of us asked the question, and the question was, how did you know amongst your siblings that you were the one that was going to run the Cubs? You know what his answer was? It was a beautiful answer. He says, well, it didn't take long because I was the first at the office and I was the last to leave. And my siblings simply didn't want to do that. And they realized I'm the guy that's going to do that. They're like, naturally, yeah, you're the CEO, right? It's kind of like you can hate him all you want, but guess what? I don't want to work that hard. I'm the rich son that I've been chilling for a while and I've been spoon fed and I kind of don't want to work that hard. I want to go golf 5 days a week. I want to go kind of do this. I want to sleep in. Listen, you're filtered out naturally. Where am I going with this? Our goal as a synergist is not to try to convince everybody. You're not going to win. I don't go into a room when I'm speaking to a crowd trying to win 100% of people over. That's called conformity. You will be miserable. I am trying to speak to people who, in the context of the book Power versus Force, there's people above a consciousness level of 200, and there's those below 200. Below 200 is shame, apathy, guilt, pride, arrogance, desire, anger. Those are the levels below 200. And we know which political party has a lot of that, right? Then you have the people above 200, which are courage. You have the courage to have tough conversations. You are willing to have the conversations. Your ability to be able to be neutral and entertain both ideas and then decide what you think is best for the country, right? And you have the ability to reason. The key word is reason. My job as a leader, and whoever decides to become the leader of the free world after President Trump, has to be able to deliver the message to the people who have the ability to reason. That is a very small audience. Right now, you can look at a lot of different data, and you'll notice the Independence Party is growing, the Independent Party. Some say 49%, RFK said 43%. More and more people are leaving the Republican Party and the Independent Party. They're going here, right? They're leaning a little bit more to this side. For a person that knows how to give a message to the reasonable community, because we know elections are won by people in the middle, not the left or the right. You and the people in the middle, those are the reasonable people that maybe are going to say, you guys make a lot of sense. I don't understand what the Democrats are doing right now. That's who's running the world, running America. I think a synergist who doesn't compromise values and principles, who knows how to speak in a reasonable fashion, has the courage and the willingness to talk to them, and targets the reasonable people, I think will be safe. This is not about winning everybody over, because that's impossible.
Do you think, Pat, as I get older, I try to be less smart and I try to be more wise? And I think those two things are not the same. And one of the things about wisdom is you're always, and you think you should, check your own self-awareness. And I have this conversation with my co-host on Fox and Friends Weekend, Rachel Campos-Duffy, a lot. Just because I believe something doesn't mean it is so. Just because I believe something, or the way I see the way something is, doesn't mean it's going to win. And what I'm getting at is, you and I don't know each other well, but I can lean upon a couple of things here. One, you and I don't think I'm betraying any confidence, is you and I had a phone conversation. It was about a year ago. And you said to me, I remember you saying, I really liked the Will Cain on First Take. I liked how fiery you were on First Take, And one of the things that told me that day is, one, Patrick Bet-David watches some First Take. And I know you're a sports fan. But of course, what First Take represents is being in the arena. It's a place where people of disagreement try to make arguments with each other. And based upon some occasions, it's reasonable. Other times, it's very unreasonable. But it is literally in the arena. And then I'm also going to lean on what you've built, what you're building at Valuetainment. And, I really like your content. I probably told you that a year ago. I maintain it today. I think that you're doing something that's really interesting and not well represented in the media spheres, where you're trying to bring together on numerous occasions people of disagreement for interesting conversations. What I'm curious about, Patrick, is, and you've been successful, right? And you've recently brought in former CNN host and Chris Cuomo. What I'm curious about and asking you about wisdom is, you're building a company and you like a certain type of thing, which, by the way, for what it's worth, you and I share that similarity. I like the same type of thing, but I'm not 100% convinced that that is the path of success. Not for you to build an empire, but to bring America together. There are too many models of success where people confirm biases, provide affirmation, don't appeal through reason, but appeal through emotion. And what I'm wondering is your appeal for a synergist something that you like, or it actually appeals to America?
Well, I mean, you and I can say whatever we want to say, right? Like Angel Reese is like, I'm also the reason why the WNBA is doing very well. Data says otherwise, sweetheart, because the data says the average WNBA attendance at a game is 7,300. The average game that you play in is 10,000, but the average game that Caitlin Clark goes home or road is 15,600. They're not that interested in you. They're interested in Caitlin Clark. Not because of her skin color, because she's an underdog, and America's always loved underdog. Whether your name is Serena Williams, whether your name is Tiger Woods, whether your name is Caitlin Clark, we like underdogs, right? And numbers never lie. A person can hate Joe Rogan all they want. He's number one in 94 countries on Spotify. This last week, Candace Owens posted the top 3 podcasts on Spotify. It was her, Rogan 1, Tucker 2, and Candace was 3, right? Now, what do those 3 have in common? Just the fact that they have their own opinions, and they're going to talk that you don't agree with everything Joe says. You don't agree with everything Tucker says. You don't agree with everything Candace says. But guess what? That's what they're saying. Now, you can sit there and say, I fully disagree with them, right? That's the conversation. You can go on Piers Morgan. Your name is Candace. You guys can have a fiery conversation together. And then you and I can, dissect the whole thing and say, this is where I disagree with Piers. This is where I disagree with Candace. And that's what the market does. But the numbers tell you the market is interested in that. Piers Morgan, since October 7th, in my opinion, has been the number one guy. Why? Because he's brought everybody. And you know what happened when he brought Bassem Youssef? 30 million plus views, whatever it was. You know what happens when he brings a jank debating another guy on the other side? 6 million views. You know what happens? He's bringing the world is telling you they're interested in discourse and debate. So I'm not one. I've never had the reputation of losing sleep over wanting to win you over or win people over. I'm a leader amongst leaders. When you identify at 28 years old, I wanted to find out what was the pinnacle of my life. Was it about being a billionaire? I could care less. Was it about fame? Could care less. Was it about being in Hollywood? Could care less. Finally, I realized at 28 years old, the most important thing that I wanted was to be a leader amongst leaders. And that's going to take a lot of work for me to get to that point. And along the way, we're going to make a lot of mistakes. No problem. I'm not one that's afraid of making mistakes. I'm not going to walk around eggshells trying to please everybody else on mainstream media or media period or friends and family because one person's not happy with what we're doing. Here's the reality of it. Do you know who watched the conversation between Dave Smith and Chris Cuomo? Probably Anthony Fauci. Do you know who probably hated that podcast that we had between the two for 3 hours? Probably Big Pharma. You know who probably hated that conversation that we had that got tens of millions of views all over? If you include Twitter, X, Instagram, probably couple hundred million views. All the people from the establishment hated that podcast. So we were able to bring people from the establishment to watch that because Chris, many would say, represents the establishment side. He may not even like the fact that I'm saying this, and he and I can get into an argument saying, I can't believe you said that on Will Cain. No problem. I'm very comfortable having arguments and debates. I'm simply trying to bring the eyeballs. I have my own positions. People know where I stand politically. You know where I stand family-wise. You know where I stand. The other day, I put a tweet about, why is it that we have 143 days a year dedicated to the LGBTQ community, and we have one day dedicated to Father's Day and Mother's Day? Well, first of all, gays don't procreate. Neither do lesbians. Why is our national, birth rate the lowest it's ever been at 1.6? Because we're endorsing these types of things, and we've given the entire month of Pride Month dedicated to that. We're not increasing our birth rates. Oh, no wonder Chuck Schumer's getting on stage saying, well, we know the birth rate problem we have in America. This is why we need immigrants to come to America because we're not having any kids anymore. Chuck, why do you think we're not having any more kids anymore? How much are we edifying husband and wives and families who want to have kids and raise their families? What happened to the Lyndon Johnson case and ideas that he proposed in 1964, where we went from 4% of kids in America in 1964 being born to single mothers to today it's 40%. You think these policies have bad consequences? Why don't we have those types of conversations? My idea is I want to get back to two kids, child rate. I want to go to 2.5. And to do that, we got to go to certain other values. But we're definitely not going to shy away from signing certain. I'm going to sign people that people are going to say, man, good move by PBD. I will definitely watch him. And I'm going to sign people that
I like the move.
Watch him. But regardless, viewership has increased. May was our biggest viewership month in the history of the Valuetainment brand. We've never had this many viewership in the month of May.
I like the move of signing Chris Cuomo, and I appreciate what you have to say about the numbers, what Piers Morgan is building. I agree with you. That's why I always check it. That's why I want to say, if I agree with something, if it's something that I believe, I just want to ask myself, is America ready for it? But I think you're right. The numbers do reflect people need, because they're surrounded in a world of propaganda and manipulation right now, they need the sense they're getting something authentic. I'll tell you what, I want to dig into a little bit of that choice you made when you were 28 and kind of answer the question for some people, who the hell is Patrick Bet David? And then get back into Mark Cuban, Dwayne Johnson, and Jamie Dimon. What comes after Donald Trump? Let's take a quick break, and then we'll come back with more with Patrick Bet David on The Will Cain Show. It's The Will Cain Show, streaming live at foxnews.com, on the Fox News YouTube channel, the Fox News Facebook page, and always on demand. Hit subscribe on YouTube. There's a button in the text description right underneath this live stream. You can catch The Will Cain Show, past episodes or exclusive interviews with the likes of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or Donald Trump by just hitting subscribe at YouTube or on Apple or on Spotify. We're still hanging out with Valuetainments. Patrick Bet David, the host of the PBD show, the PBD podcast, among many other shows there at Valuetainment. For those that are wondering, Pat, who the hell is Patrick Bet David?
Born and raised in Iran, right before the revolution, October 18, 1978, to a communist mother and an imperialist father. Lived in Iran for almost 11 years. When Khomeini died, June 2nd or 3rd of 89. 6 weeks later, we escaped to Germany, lived at a refugee camp in Germany for a year and a half. Came to the States November 28, 1990. Glendale, California, went to the Army, went to 101st Airborne Division Air Assault. I got out of the military. I wanted to be the next Arnold, Mr. Olympia, marry a Kennedy, going to Hollywood, eventually run for governor. And then I married a Hudman. I went into the financial services. I left bodybuilding, and I realized Hollywood isn't for me. And in financial services, I started off with Morgan Stanley, Dean Witter, and then eventually went to Transamerica World Financial. October of 2009, started my own insurance company. Grew it from 66 agents to 50,000 agents, eventually sold it, had a nice multi nine-figure exit. And then in the meantime, started a media business on the side that turned into a consulting firm, Bet David Consulting, which you can go to betdavid.com to learn about what we're doing. That led to our event this September. We're going to have an event called the Vol Conference, 10,000 people, Palm Beach Convention Center. Dwayne Johnson will be there as well at the event for 3.5 days. We're talking business, things like that. And then launched a few apps, have grown the business, married, 4 kids, somebody who loves America and somebody who believes future looks bright, but at the same time got another side of me that's overly paranoid about the future as well.
So multi-9-figure exit, and this is from the, I believe, life insurance business, right?
Yes.
Life insurance sales across the country. You were talking about estate planning a moment ago. So I'm assuming, I'll never know unless you want to add it up for me, between taxes of some sort. I don't know, what the exit entailed, whether or not you were 100% owner, but we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. Why then, hey, about a decade ago, I want to do media?
Yeah, so Pastor Dudley Rutherford, I used to go to this church called Shepherd of the Hills. We love the church. It's in Porter Ranch. I believe it's the best church in America. Last week, I was in L.A. going to Universal Studios. He came. We went and hung out to get out of Universal with the kids. We're going on Jurassic Park ride, all this stuff. He one day gave a message saying the 7 mountains to climb. And he's going through church, family, business, military, Hollywood, entertainment, all these things he's breaking down. And he said the most influential one and the toughest one to climb is media. And he said this to me, I think in 08, 09, 2010-ish is what I'm giving a timeline. And then I started thinking about, I'm like, you know what? If you think about movies and storytelling, there's a lot of influence with how we look at people based on movies. Rocky IV had a big impact on my life, right? When you think about movies, John Q with Denzel Washington, what happened to his son, right? The fact that he didn't have the money to buy the heart replacement for him, or some of these movies we go through, you're watching, there's a lot of powerful stuff here for movies. So eventually when I started studying the marketplace and seeing who's competing in the marketplace, I sized everybody up just the same way I did insurance. And I saw opportunities and leaks in certain areas that people were not competing in. And then I tested out my content to see if the market's even interested in the way I talk and the way I communicate in my values and principles. I said, I'm going to give it 2 years. If the market's not interested, I'm done. I'll take a different route in media. And then slowly but surely there was interest, and then that grew. And I said, wait a minute, there's maybe more interest in this. I've never wanted to publicly talk too much about politics. I said, let me take the risk and do that. I separated the channel from Valuetainment to PBD Podcast. On PBD Podcast, I talk more about podcasts, more about politics and current events. And then eventually it turned into what it is today. Now we're going to be buying a campus, 11 acres, God willing, and doing the whole 9. You'll be seeing us in the next 3, 5, 10 years doing movies, docs, a lot of different things. We're just getting warmed up, but I think America is primed right now for new media companies to compete, and the market's going to filter them out very quickly. You're going to know who was motivated by money. You're going to realize who is completely on one side, that they can't entertain other types of conversations, no problem, who was motivated by fame. And then you're also going to know in the next 10 years who was motivated by a real crusade, a real cause about wanting to correct an injustice. And that's going to take about a decade to filter that out. I think will be very formidable in the next 10 years.
So you care a lot, as you've mentioned in our conversation today, Pat, about leadership. Leadership is a fascinating thing because I think it's not tethered to ideology. It's not necessarily, there's no monopoly, There's powerful leaders from the left. There's powerful leaders from the right. There's actually no monopoly on, virtuous leaders versus those leaders who have malevolent intentions. They're very successful bad leaders. You know what I mean? What I'm getting at is, you and I talked about what comes after Trump. I want to revisit this for one moment because you actually took the answer in a direction that I wasn't thinking. We'll come back to the way I was thinking in a moment. But Cuban, Diamond, Dwayne Johnson, what do you see in them beyond celebrity that represents some quality of leadership?
I think Jamie Dimon's running the number one bank in the world. And he has sat down with every major name in the world to know he's a phone call away from anybody. And he's overcome a lot of challenges as well as a leader. He comes as a former guy who was an assistant to Sandy Weil at American Express. He started off as his executive assistant, and eventually Sandy fired him because of what Jamie Dimon made the decision, I think, to either not promote or fire Sandy's daughter, and Sandy's wife was not happy about it. You can read the House of Diamond and kind of study it to see what happened there. And he comes to Chase, and look where he takes it. You got to give the guy a lot of credibility, and at the same time, he's not a Trump guy, but while he's at World Economic Forum, he's sitting there and disagreeing with people on the left to say, what are you doing sitting here saying bad things about Trump? He actually did very good things for the economy. So he has the brass to have those types of conversations. You don't have to like him. You don't have to love him. But he's a guy that's a leader who has a lot of poise, and he carries himself very, very well. I like that part of Jamie. I think Bob Iger was interested in that. I think Bob's had a terrible last 3 years, or else he would have been in the top 10 list as well of somebody that I think was aspirational about wanting to run for president. I think that may be out the window because he had a ride of a lifetime until he came back, and it's not been a ride of a lifetime for Bob Iger. Dwayne Johnson, super likable. I think he loves America. I think the interview he did with you when you were able to ask him a question about his position he took with Joe Biden, would he do the same thing? He says, at that time, I'm paraphrasing, but at that time I thought that was the right move to make, but I will not be doing the same thing I did then. That was an interview you did with him. I think it was a stadium behind us. I don't know if that was XFL or where you were at, but you were in a stadium while you're doing the interview.
WrestleMania.
So
WrestleMania.
He's a guy that's, liked by left and the right. And I just don't know if he's willing to go to the phases of being hated, because it's going to happen with certain people when you take certain hard stances politically. But every time you see the guy, he's pro-military, pro-flag. He was at the RNC in 2000, 2001, on stage speaking. Most people forget about that. You can go type in Dwayne Johnson, RNC, 01. You'll see him on stage. And he's like a Michael figure. Michael Jordan had customers from the left and the right, and he knew how to kind of balance that out. I think that's the part with him. And then Mark Cuban, I just think he thinks he's better than Trump. And I think he is got a little bit of a jealousy and envy and competitive side, whichever one of those three may be, that's driving him to want to overcome that. And I don't know if he's going to end up doing it or not. And the only reason he doesn't do it, maybe he's distancing himself from selling the ownership because he wants to not have any of the repercussions going to the MAV side. But I wouldn't be surprised if he puts his name in the competition in 27, 28. He thinks he can compete with anyone, and I think he would be a formidable Democratic candidate for 2028 presidential nominee.
So my thoughts on those three individuals quickly is this is like what you said when we first started our conversation. Trump is one of one. And so it's hard to build a model. And you did it really well. You talked about, look, what comes after Jordan, what comes after any number of seminal figures. And the answer is not someone who resembles the original figure. LeBron comes after Jordan. And LeBron is nothing like Jordan in terms of play style, body style, mentality. So you just don't look for a carbon copy. You don't look for a clone. Whatever comes next will be a surprise. Jamie Dimon, in my estimation, extremely competent and somewhat unpredictable, but I think that the next leader of America has to be able to connect with the common man. Not exclusively, not a pure populist, but at least have some ability to seem to connect to the common man. I question that with Jamie Dimon. I really like Dwayne. I've gotten to know Dwayne. I think he's a really, really good dude with the best of intentions. I don't know, to your point, of whether or not he has the thick enough skin to deal with half of the country hating you. That's just going to be what happens in politics. They will. And then Cuban. I just don't think Cuban has the charm to pull people over, and I don't even know what to make of him anymore. There was a time, Pat, when he was like, "Yeah, I like Ayn Rand," and he was unpredictable and he had interesting thoughts, and now he's indistinguishable from a "in this house, love is love," and the cliched sign sitting in the front of every far left household, and that's Mark Cuban. He's like a human embodiment of that yard sign, and so I don't know anymore that Mark Cuban satisfies any of the things beyond celebrity and ambition to get to be president. By the way, you were born in Iran. You did serve in the U.S. military. Leadership is what you're all about. Where are you taking this leadership? Like, what do you want?
Oh, I can't run for president because I'm not born here. If I was
right.
born here, I would certainly consider that, because from a place of I think I would make certain policies and lead the world in a way that would be valuable. It would be a different style, but it would be my way because I have confidence in my way of delivering. But that's out the question. So I'm not somebody that's going to play that role. But I'm going to be involved in a lot of conversations behind closed doors when I'm speaking to different people and my own thoughts and strategies that I have in mind. Doesn't mean that I'm right. It doesn't mean that I'm 100% accurate. Doesn't mean, but when you're sitting down and you're thinking about a position like this, there's a few different things we can think about. A lot of times we think, man, I don't have all the information. What am I going to do if I sit against another guy that's a historian? Like when you listen to Mark Levin, oh my God, that guy's like read every one of these books. I can never be like Mark Levin, right? Oh my God. When you listen to Thomas Sowell or you listen to Dennis Prager, these guys are ridiculous. Why didn't Prager ever run? Right? Imagine what he would have done. So you think that's one element, right? Which is very important. That's one part. Then you think the other part, which is, the charm component, the people skills, the being able to sell the dream, being able to sell the vision, being able to sell where we're going, being able to sell the history of what makes us special and doing that part. And then the other part is, the painting the picture of the fear. What if we don't do something to get people to take a lot of action? Trump knows how to do that. Obama knew how to do that. Clinton knew how to do that. Reagan knew how to do that. John F. Kennedy certain people know how to do that. And policies comes with experience in your personal life where you're sitting around seeing what's going on with policies. This didn't work. That was a bad idea. I remember one time, very interesting story for you. I have an office in Addison, Texas, right? I know you're a Texas guy, and my office is in Addison, Texas, down the street from the airport. And my office, probably out of 100 employees at the time, I would say 70% were African-American. Let's just say 60 to 70% are African-American, employees home office. And probably most of them were not fans of Trump. And it's 2016, and he's talking about lowering the capital gains taxes and all this stuff. And boom, he wins. And I bring everybody into my office, and I'm talking to all the employees. I said, so guys, how do you feel about this? Yeah, blah, 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 blah. I said, well, listen, did you guys hear about what he's doing with capital gains? What's capital gains? When you're an employee, you're not studying capital gains because it doesn't directly impact. I said, well, he is going to allow us to give the money more to us to invest it in the way we want to run the company than giving the money to taxes, which is allowing the government to do better with the company. All he's saying is he thinks you and I can do better with the money than the government can. Oh, I never thought about it that way before. So because of that, here's what we're doing. What's that? For every month you've been with the company here, we're giving you $100 every month. It's a bonus. You didn't do anything different just because the capital gains taxes was decreased. People in the room are crying. The people who were in the room, they will remember this. They're remote. Oh my God, this is so amazing. Patrick, does this really mean I've only been? Yes. Seriously, yes. Oh my God, this is awesome. We love you. I said, I don't know why you love me. I didn't do it. Trump lowered capital gains taxes. I said, the only way I'm willing to do this is if you're willing to tweet and say thank you to Donald Trump. No, I'm not. I said, you don't need to do that. I said, no, the point is, that's the concept of delivering a message in a way where the average person sits there and says, you know what, I never thought about it that way before. I think some of the candidates that we have, honestly, they look at the screen when they're talking to a guy like you, and they think their audience is only senators and congressmen. They sit there and talk to a guy like you,
right?
And I don't want to give names. I've been in some of these rooms, and they're only talking to policy people. They don't realize 99% of the audience that's watching is the average day-to-day person that's worried about their family, finances. So we have to, simplify the way we're explaining a lot of things that we're coming up with. And I think we need a candidate that's going to play that role. But for me, I'm going to be playing my role to make sure America stays as the greatest country in the world. I'm going to play it in a different way. I think when you think about Avengers, everybody has a different superpower. Mine is very different than being involved in politics and president, governor, any of that stuff.
Well, you've been very successful, so it'd be a disservice if I didn't provide my audience the opportunity to hear from you on this one thing. We have an economy that right now feels like it's teetering. I know the stock market's doing fine, but inflation's not yet under control. Interest rates don't show sign yet of coming down. That means at some point, who knows, hard landing, recession. It's already sitting on top of an economy where young people can't really buy homes. But everybody has those ambitions, Pat. Everybody wants to, I hate to ask the question like, what advice would you give to someone trying to get rich? Because, again, back to that wisdom thing, like richness is Richness is not exclusively defined by wealth. Now, wealth is a big part of it, and people want to build their own wealth because what wealth affords is freedom and purpose and ability to apply oneself in the appropriate direction. But how about that? I'll ask it that way. What would be your one piece of advice to people looking to build wealth?
Well, let's kind of go through that. Whenever I sit down and I talk to somebody, let's just say someone says, hey, Pat, I want you to talk to my 22-year-old son. He has big plans of wanting to do something. Can you give him some counsel? Or I'll get somebody that's maybe 42 years old who's had a decent career, but they kind of want to make real money and they just got fired. They're like, what do I do next? I don't want to put myself in this situation again. And I got a couple $100,000, but I'm not wealthy. I'm just barely making, and I'm trying to take care of my family, my 3 kids. First thing you do is you make a list of your gifts and the talents that God's given you. I love math and I love people. Very simple. So I'm very curious with people and their stories. And I love numbers. I just think those are 2 things that are my passion. So financial industry was a very natural process of me getting into that because of those 2 things I have. Now, my son loves politics and movies. My youngest son loves sports and competition and numbers. My oldest daughter loves bakery and she's sweet, customer service, brings people together. My youngest daughter is super animated, right? Sometimes we just have to sit down and kind of make a list of what things, like when I was first starting my channel, I said, babe, what do I talk about a lot? I don't know what channel should be around. She said, babe, and I talked to 5 people that I trust the most, with my wife being there. She said, babe, you're always talking about capitalism. You're always talking about business. You're always talking about entrepreneurship. I'm like, you know what? Then that's what we're doing. We're going to be talking about those types of things. So what's your gifts? That's 1. 2, a guy the other day asked me a question on the app Monect. Monect is where, you can ask people a question and you pay for it and you get a respond back. So you can cold email somebody, DM somebody on Instagram. No one's going to get back to you. But on Monect, do you have a minute to connect? Let's Monect. On Monect, the guy pays me to respond back in a audio format or a text or video. And he says, Pat, I have XYZ amount of money I'm making per year. I'm married. I got 2 kids. But I've lost my fire. I read your book, Your Next 5 Moves. I read your book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. But I've lost my fire. What do I do? I said, okay, let's talk about that. Whenever you've lost fire, and sometimes you can waste a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years to find that fire, all you have to do is go run with a fired up founder. For example, do you think if you work with Elon Musk, naturally you're going to be fired up? Of course, because he's fired up, right? Do you think if you go play with a player on a team that's absolutely a driver, that level of standards and expectations is going to pass down to you? Yes, of course, right? So, I initially, when I came into business and I wanted to make some money and create some wealth, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I didn't have a vision. I'm like, one day we're going to save America by bringing back the free enterprise system and hope to America. I had nothing like that. So I went and interviewed people that I wanted to work for. And I said, I would literally ask people, who do you know that's the guy that you think is the most ambitious person that's going to do big things? Oh, it's this person. Really? Can you introduce him to me? So I was recruiting my boss. Such a very different concept. I'm like, who should I work for? Who should I go with? And then I would go and interview with these guys. And, one of the guys, Jamie Hepp, that I just, he's writing a book coming out. And I interviewed with him at 22 years old. I'm like, dude, this guy's going to do something. And I'm like, then this other guy. And I'm like, I want to work for this guy. So I was able to shadow others that were way ahead of me for me to learn what they did. And that kind of saved me 10 years of what I would have done on my own. But I did that in 6 to 12 months. So I think that would be the feedback I would give at the high. And then last but not least, I'll tell you this. No skill set in America till today pays more than you're learning how to sell. I know a lot of people don't like to hear this. Obama's a salesperson. Trump is a salesperson. Steve Jobs is a salesperson. The other day, Elon Musk gets on stage and says the robot business is going to be 1 billion robots. He says 10 billion robots is what we're going to build. He says, and I believe Tesla is going to build 10%, maybe 20, 30% of those robots. What's he doing? He is getting the level of optimism in the stock of Tesla to be like, oh my God, what's going to Tesla look like in the future? Elon's a salesperson, and then he delivers. So I think a very, very high paid skill set for a lot of people to have is sales. I don't think enough people go learn how to sell. You can actually learn it. The market's going to pay very well if you know how to sell.
My favorite thing you said there, Pat, is recruit your boss. And I've heard that on more than one occasion from successful people. And I like how you said it can save you 10 years because you recruit the right boss, he can put you in the right position to succeed, plus all the intangibles of what you will learn from them. I made that mistake, Pat. I always wanted to be, you know how the kids talk about Sigma? I wanted to be the lone wolf. I wanted to be the pioneer before I ever worked for a big corporation, which I've done for entirely too long. But I wanted to do it on my own because I thought there'd be more virtue in that. You know, I didn't want to trade on networking. I always thought it was a dirty word. It's not. You got to recruit your own boss. It's really good stuff. Patrick, Bet, David, awesome conversation. We could go for 3. We could do this 5 times. I hope we do it again, man, on your show or mine. I always enjoy talking to you. Patrick, Bet, David of the PBD Podcast and Valuetainment. Thank you so much, Pat.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate you.